The secret Dumbledore never told Harry about Snape. By infected journey. There is a memory Harry Potter never saw. Not in the Pensieve, not in the Shrieking Shack, not in the final seconds of Severus Snape's life as Nagini's venom stole his breath. It was a memory Snape chose not to give, because if Harry had seen it, he might never have forgiven him. Or worse, he might have understood him completely. We all believe we know the story of Severus Snape, the bitter professor, the double agent, the man who loved Lily Evans and spent 17 years protecting her son. But what if there was a moment, a single, fragile second, when everything could have gone differently? Before Snape went to Dumbledore, before he begged for Lily's life. There was a night of silence in Spinner's End. The prophecy had been delivered, half heard, half understood, but Snape was clever enough to see where it would lead. The Dark Lord would not ignore it. And once Voldemort began to suspect which child it referred to, there would be no mercy. Snape knew whose child it would be. Lily's. That night, for the first time since joining the Death Eaters, Severus Snape felt something colder than fear. Regret. Not regret for serving darkness, not regret for the ideology, but regret that his ambition had collided with the one person he had never stopped loving. There are no records of what he did that evening, but imagine the scene. A small room, a single trunk pulled from beneath the bed, potion ingredients carefully packed, notes, books, a wand placed last, like punctuation. He could have fled. Voldemort was powerful, but not omniscient. Wizards disappeared every year. Snape was brilliant. He could have survived abroad, changed his name, begun again. He considered it. Running would mean living, but living would mean watching from afar as Lily died. And Severus Snape could endure humiliation. He could endure hatred. He could endure isolation. But he could not endure helplessness. So instead of running, he chose something harder. He went to Albus Dumbledore. We know he begged. We know he asked for Lily's life. But what we rarely consider is what Dumbledore demanded in return. Dumbledore did not trust easily, and he did not waste opportunities. If Snape wanted Lily protected, Dumbledore would ensure that protection came at a cost. Absolute loyalty, not temporary allegiance, not strategic cooperation. A lifetime. Imagine the conversation. Dumbledore listening, eyes sharp behind half-moon spectacles. You asked me to protect her, he might have said quietly. But protection is not a moment, Severus. It is a commitment. And then perhaps the true price. If she survives, you will stay away from her. No explanations, no reconciliation, no chance to rebuild what had been broken. Snape would never be the one she thanked, never the one she looked at with softened eyes. He agreed, because his love was never about possession. It was about survival. And if survival required distance, he would accept distance. But fate does not bend so easily. Lily died, James died, and Severus Snape arrived too late. We know he held her body. We know he was shattered. We know Dumbledore found him there. But there is a detail rarely explored. There was a child upstairs, Harry, a baby in a crib, crying, alive. Snape climbed those stairs. What happened in that room is not recorded in memory vials or confessions. But imagine the silence. The wreckage below, the smell of spellfire in the air, and a child with Lily's eyes staring up at him. This was James Potter's son, the living proof of everything Snape had lost. And for one heartbeat, just one, the thought would have come. End it. End the prophecy. End the future. End the reminder. It would have been easy. No witnesses, no Dark Lord, no war yet defined. One spell, history rewritten. That is the moment Harry never saw. Because that is the moment that defines Severus Snape more than any Patronus ever could. He did nothing. He lowered his wand. Not because he loved James, not because he cared for the prophecy, but because killing the child would not bring Lily back. And worse, it would prove Lily right about him. She had once accused him of walking a path that led only to darkness. In that nursery, Severus Snape stood at the edge of that path and stepped back. That choice mattered. Years later, when he stood in the Shrieking Shack, bleeding, dying, looking into the same green eyes, he gave Harry carefully selected memories. He showed the prophecy. He showed the plea to Dumbledore. He showed the silver doe. But memories can be curated. Snape was a master of control, of presentation, of narrative. He did not show Harry the hesitation. He did not show Harry the moment of temptation. Because heroes are easier to forgive when their choices are clean. But real redemption is never clean. Dumbledore understood that too. Dumbledore himself curated truth. He withheld information from Harry for years. He shaped events. He manipulated outcomes. If Harry had seen that Snape once considered ending his life, even for a fraction of a second, would he have named his son after him? Would forgiveness have survived that knowledge? Perhaps Dumbledore believed that some truths serve no purpose, that the war required symbols, and Snape needed to be brave, not conflicted. But the truth is more powerful than the legend. Severus Snape was not defined by loving Lily. He was not defined by hating James. He was not even defined by serving Dumbledore. He was defined by repeated resistance against his worst self. Every year in the classroom, when he saw James's face in Harry and chose to protect him anyway, every time he swallowed his bitterness to maintain his cover, every time he endured suspicion from both sides, he chose over and over. Not because he was kind, he wasn't. Not because he was pure, he wasn't. But because somewhere, beneath resentment and pride and anger, there was a line he would not cross. In that silent nursery in Godric's Hollow, he discovered it. And once discovered, he never crossed it again. That is the memory Harry never saw, the one that makes Snape less heroic and more human. Because true courage is not the absence of dark thoughts. It is the refusal to act on them. Severus Snape was not a saint. He was not a monster. He was a man who stood at the edge of becoming one and stepped back. And perhaps that is why his story still unsettles us. Because we know that edge. We have all felt it. The quiet war between who we are and who we decide to be. And in the end, Severus Snape decided. Not once, but again and again. And that is why, even now, his shadow still lingers over Hogwarts. Not as a legend, but as a warning, and as proof that even the darkest wizard in the room can choose the light